Okay, dokie. So, see what I mean? I jumped ahead. All right, so everybody, welcome. And for those of you that know me, I am Michelle Rusk, and I am a holistic health coach and clinician. And this is my little daughter, Vivi. She'll be joining us today. So today we're going to be talking all about food allergies, intolerances, and sensitivities, and what they are, first of all, and what they do to our bodies. And I just want to let everybody know up front, I'm going to be kind of interjecting throughout the presentation what happened to me, because I am severely gluten intolerant and dairy sensitive. And as I go through like the signs and the symptoms and all those things that are involved in it, I'll kind of let you know, yep, that was just like me, and those kinds of things. So it was definitely a full circle journey for me, learning that I was gluten intolerant and dairy sensitive. And it was what I like to say, it was a beautiful blessing, but it wasn't easy because I had to basically revamp my whole lifestyle, which is part of the reason why I did the summit. And it's part of the reason today why I'm doing this webinar, to really help everybody kind of understand the differences between what an actual allergy is versus intolerance and sensitivity. So I'm actually gonna minimize my screen, and then we're just gonna jump right in and go for it. And that way you guys can just listen and relax and take notes. And if you have any questions, there will be a Q&A at the end. I will answer them to the best of my ability. I'm not shy to say if I don't know the answer, but if you ask me a question and I don't know, I'm happy to get back to you like in an email after I've had a little bit of time to find the answer for you. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. All right, so again, welcome to Food Allergies. So now we're going to take a closer look at food allergies, okay? So there's a lot of information here. Some of it can get a little bit technical, so just bear with me, as you know, some of the terms a lot of you might have already heard, and some of the terms you guys, some of you guys might not be familiar with, which is totally cool. Okay, so an allergic reaction to food is an immune system response that begins with the production of an antibody. And the antibody then attaches to the antigen, or in this case, allergen, and signals the immune system to begin the attack. For our bodies to be able to do this is an incredible tool when dealing with harmful microbes. But with an immune response dysfunction, much like a food allergy, this internal alarm goes off for something that's otherwise innocent, such as a food molecule. So the antibody present in most allergic reactions is IgE, or immunoglobulin. And when the IgE antibodies are produced, they signal the mast cells, which are found in the lining of our skin, nose, intestines, and bronchial tubes, to release chemical messengers called histamine. So this is why when we get runny noses, or we get hives, or we're having difficulty breathing, that's what's happening. Your mast cells are being signaled to say, hey, we have a problem. And then many physiological changes occur, such as dilation of the blood cells, decrease in blood pressure, skin reactions, and the swelling of the mouth and the throat. And that's the most severe. We all know, I'm sure many of us have heard of anaphylaxis shock. So that is the most severe allergy, and that is just very dangerous. It's a life-threatening reaction. Researchers have estimated that approximately 15 million Americans suffer from at least one food allergy. And of that figure, this is a lot, 5.9 million are children under the age of 18. So, and unfortunately, these numbers are only going up. So, you know, that's a lot. That's quite a bit. All right, so now we're going to be looking at talking a little bit more in depth about allergies, sensitivities, and intolerances, okay? So intolerances and sensitivities to foods are very different than allergies. And intolerance and insensitivity are kind of used interchangeably, whereas an allergy kind of stands on its own. But that doesn't mean they do not negatively affect your quality of life. And in fact, some mild food allergies cause less distress than a severe food intolerance. And I will also say, like myself, being gluten sensitive or intolerant and dairy sensitive, I had a mixture of both. I was actually releasing histamines. I was suffering from chronic hives, and it was god awful. And for a long time, and they were in the worst places. I had hives on my joints and on my butt, of all places. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Jekyll. And I would wake up in the middle of the night, and it was just terrible. Like, they were waking me up in the middle of the night, and it was the most uncomfortable thing. I actually had to put myself on Zyrtec because I'm allergic to Benadryl. And I had to put myself on Zyrtec, and until I figured out what was really going on, I basically lived on Zyrtec. So, which I didn't want to do, which was also part of my lifestyle change. But they can happen interchangeably. Like, I had a severe intolerance, but I was having an allergic reaction at the same time. So that's the point that I'm making there. Food intolerances generally occur in response to poor digestion of a specific food, whether it be from intestinal dysfunction or lack of essential enzymes. Food intolerances are highly unique issues since they can manifest very differently between individuals. We are not the same as one other person. We're not going to all have the same kind of reaction. Our bodies are very different. So common symptoms of food intolerances can range from digestive distress, such as gas, bloating, abdominal cramping, diarrhea, nausea, and vomiting, to seemingly unrelated issues like headaches, mucus production, and brain fog. I had every single one of those. The latter. I didn't suffer from digestive distress. I was not one of those people that was getting like these massive stomach aches. I had bloating, and I would have the occasional gas, but my intolerance really manifested itself in, like I said earlier, you know, hives. I had joint pain. I had headaches. My allergies were going crazy. Mucus production, brain fog. I even suffered from some anxiety and some depression, and we'll get into that a little bit too. So while these problems are often not regarded as severe, they can advance to more serious problems if left unattended. It's estimated that every 3 in 4 people suffer from some form of food intolerance, varying in severity. Everything from entire food groups to specific chemicals found in foods can lead to the symptoms listed above, and indeed be an intolerance. So now we're really going to kind of dive in and try to figure out, so what happens with the gut when all this happens? So leaky gut syndrome, or often referred to as LGS in short, is closely linked to food intolerances. It occurs when the intestinal lining becomes so permeable that it begins to allow large molecules such as undigested food particles and toxins, right into our bloodstream. This is due to the cells of the intestinal lining becoming inflamed and damaged. And in response, the immune system retaliates by attacking these invaders, much like we see in food allergies. And when it's left untreated, a continual cycle of damage occurs. And this translates to further digestive distress, nutrient deficiencies, and more immune reactions. The symptoms are very similar to food intolerances and is treated through nutritional therapy, so just revamping basically your diet through probably a process of elimination, which we're also going to talk about, and repair to the gastrointestinal system. And that really starts to happen when you do the nutritional therapy. To help. So now, this is a big topic, inflammation, okay? So inflammation, we need inflammation, but we don't need it to be chronic. So inflammation is the much needed process within our bodies. Think about like when you get a cut, right? When you cut yourself, and it starts to get red and it starts to swell around that cut a little bit. And then as it heals over, it starts to get a little itchy. That is an important process. That is our body actually healing, from that cut. And we need that mild to moderate inflammation around it to help heal it. It's our body's natural response to any form of damage or foreign invader that's responsible for facilitating the healing process. Chronic inflammation, however, is very dangerous. Many of you might have already heard of adrenal fatigue or adrenal burnout. Excuse me, that's from chronic inflammation. In fact, research suggests that chronic inflammation can be found at the root of almost every chronic disease. So think about that. We're talking about chronic diseases ranging from autoimmune diseases to cancer to brain degenerative diseases. And there's a lot of new studies that are coming out all upon the fact of the matter that inflammation has a huge impact on those chronic diseases. And it can be caused and sustained by unresolved infections, persistent stress, which is a lot of us these days, or you guessed it, regular exposure to foods that you're allergic, intolerant, or sensitive to. Allergy symptoms are usually easy to diagnose and avoid when they are recognized. If one chooses to ignore these warning signs, however, they're setting up an attractive environment for inflammation to thrive. And intolerances, on the other hand, are often harder to identify. Although there is no true immune response with these food sensitivities, it still does initiate our innate immunity or the non-specific defense mechanisms within our immune systems. This is our first level of immunity and the beginning of the inflammatory response. So, and again, if it's left untreated, or unresolved, the inflammation becomes chronic, and it really does breed a whole host of health issues, which goes back to the adrenal fatigue, and your body is in a constant state of stress, and you're constantly releasing cortisol. So now we mentioned some of the common symptoms of food allergies and intolerances, but that short list didn't encompass nearly the magnitude of side effects that come from these underlying digestive issues. So here are just some signs that you may be suffering from a food allergy or intolerance. And I will tell you that I had a lot of these. So various digestive distress, respiratory issues, water retention, unexplained weight gain, thyroid dysfunction, increased seasonal allergies, postnasal drip, migraines, joint pain, fatigue, acne, rashes, puffy eyes, irritability, depression, anxiety, insomnia, food cravings, and really many, many more. This list is obviously not the be-all, end-all, but it certainly gives you an idea of, just ask yourself that question. Am I experiencing any of these on a consistent basis? All right. So tipping the scale, weight is, especially for us ladies and for guys too, but weight seems to be a big issue. And this can be a result from unresolved food allergies. And for a few reasons. So many of the common allergens, including wheat and corn, are found in the foods that are also very rich in sugar. These foods encourage the happy neurotransmitter, the neurotransmitter in the brain called serotonin. And unfortunately, this feel-good response is very short-term, which begins the cycle of people craving more. This can escalate pretty quickly by increasing the frequency and amount the allergen enters the body. However, sometimes the allergen's not always locked in on the sugar anti-nutrient, but it's important to note if one does not know that they're experiencing a true intolerance. The body's natural response to inflammation is the release of cortisol, which I just touched on. So and there's healthy amounts, and then there are the unhealthy amounts. So as we discussed earlier, inflammation is a huge part in food allergies, intolerances, and sensitivities. Persistent allergen exposure stimulates that ongoing cortisol production, and in turn, a sustained increase in blood sugar. So what the heck does that mean? So that means the body adapts to this cortisol constantly coming into our system, and the blood sugar excess by producing more insulin. This can lead to fat accumulation in our abdomen, or even worse, insulin resistance. So that's going to put you on a path toward diabetes. That's why sugar is one of the most inflammatory and addictive substances out there. And this is also why when you're trying to take sugar out of your diet, it physically hurts. You actually go through detox. And I know that from my own personal experience because I did it. So weight gain from food allergies can also be a consequence of insufficient digestive function. The inflammation of the GI tract, nutritional deficiencies, and metabolism dysfunction are all related to food allergy complications and can lead to significant weight gain and further health complications. And other ways that food intolerances are connected to weight gain are slowing of the metabolism, increased storage of calories, water retention, harmful bacteria growth in the gut, and decrease in overall energy for physical activity. Oh, Vivi. All right. So most common culprits, food allergies and intolerances are different for everyone, but here are just a few of the most common aggravators, okay? So many of these, I'm sure a lot of you have already seen: gluten, dairy, eggs, corn, soy, peanuts, tree nuts, sesame, fish, shellfish, FODMAP foods, histamines, nitrates, yeast, and many food additives, colorants being one. All right, so the first line of defense against adverse food reactions is obviously prevention. So this means being aware of what's in the food you eat, learning to read labels adequately, and being a conscious consumer overall. Fortunately, it's legally required to state what ingredients are in packaged food. So it's required, they need to put what's on their label, what's in the product. The most common allergens can be found in a bolded list below the main ingredient list for easier finding. However, for the less common allergies, this is not something to always rely on. It's best to do your research and begin feeling comfortable reading labels to ensure you're limiting your exposure to the danger that the food might actually pose to you. So here's just a little side note. With me having to be gluten-free and dairy-free, right? There are companies out there where they label their product as gluten-free or dairy-free. But if you read further down, and it actually says on the product, processed in a facility that also processes wheat, corn, soy, dairy, peanuts. So for me, if it says that it's gluten-free, but it says that, I put it back on the shelf. And that's because I am so super sensitive that the cross-contamination, a small amount of cross-contamination will actually irritate me and I will feel it. Actually, now I've gotten to the point that I will feel it within a few hours in my joints. So I know when I have been cross-contaminated, and I try to avoid that at all costs because it is not, it's not fun. So what is it about gluten, okay? Gluten is increasingly becoming a larger issue in today's society. There are over 1.5 million people who are suffering, 1.5 million people who are suffering from gluten in one form or another, whether it be from sensitivities, intolerances, or even celiac disease. With gluten-free becoming almost a buzzword, it can be hard to navigate gluten's place in our food system. So to break it down, there is celiac disease, where the body attacks the small intestine when exposed to gluten. That is considered an actual autoimmune response, okay? The body attacks the small intestine when exposed to gluten in celiac disease. Non-celiac gluten intolerance is where the immune system attacks the gluten. So non-celiac gluten intolerance is where the immune system actually attacks the gluten in the system. So what is gluten anyway? It's the general term for a mix of proteins in many grains, such as wheat, barley, and rye. And it's found in many baked goods, as we all know, processed foods, and even in sauces. While medical diagnostic tests are available to those with celiac disease, gluten sensitivity is a bit harder to diagnose, as it was for me. Later in this presentation, I'm going to provide ways to identify the potential problems and finally get some relief from the many complications that gluten consumption can cause, as we refer to tests, and I will talk a little bit about those tests as well. Okay, so now the dangers in dairy. So there's a clear difference between lactose intolerance, milk sensitivity, and a true milk allergy, but they can all be very easily confused. So let's talk about lactose intolerance first. Lactose intolerance occurs when someone lacks the enzyme lactase needed to digest the sugar. in the milk known as lactose. The undigested lactose or sugar is then directed through the digestive system and eventually left to ferment in the intestines. And this leads to a lot of GI discomfort. So this is when you might feel the gas, the stomach cramps, the bloating, and a lot of people even actually complain about diarrhea because they're not digesting that lactose as they should. The sugar is basically just going right through them. A milk allergy is a true food allergy causing an immune-driven allergic reaction to a protein found in milk, such as whey or casein. That is me. I know that I am very casein sensitive. So it's also possible to develop a sensitivity to these proteins that acts very similarly to an allergy. In both situations, there's an excessive inflammatory response, which usually relates to increased mucus production, asthma, acne, and digestive issues. My three main culprits were mucus production, asthma, and acne. And I'm not an asthmatic, but when I was drinking milk, when I would do like heavy exercises, I would notice that I would start wheezing slightly. Ever since I've taken dairy out of my diet, I no longer have that issue. So that's definitely something to consider. I think isn't it crazy, like what foods can actually do to our body? It's really crazy. So this is an incredibly important and common issue. In fact, 3 in 4 of all people are unknowingly intolerant to dairy containing foods. So that's a big number. 3 and 4. All right. So now we're going to move into these FODMAPs, foods. So FODMAP is an acronym created and defined by researchers at Australia's Monash University. It's used to categorize certain carbohydrates, all right? And they break it down like this. Fermentables is the F, O, oligosaccharides, D, disaccharides, M, monosaccharides, and P, polyols, right? And those are sugar alcohols. So these are found in fructans, which are gluten grains, galactans, which are legumes, lactose, which can be found in dairy products, fructose, which is found in most fruits, certain vegetables, and added sugars, and sugar alcohols like xylitol, sorbitol, maltitol, and mannitol. They have so many names for sugar alcohols. It's insane. So FODMAPs have been found to be poorly absorbed by the small intestines and are often fermented in the gut and negatively impacts the intestinal microbial balance. And if you believe that you might be experiencing issues with these kinds of foods, you can check out that link right there. All right, let's keep moving. Histamine intolerance. So histamines, I told you this is like jam-packed, guys, so just bear with me. Histamines are neurotransmitters produced in response to any allergic reaction. They serve as an alarm to warn the immune system and an instant inflammatory action to prep the body to heal, which is what we talked about earlier. Overall, they are an important mechanism for the body to recover from an adverse reaction. However, those who suffer from a histamine intolerance will experience a buildup of histamines due to their body being unable to fully break it down. And this can be dangerous as histamine travels throughout the whole body. So common symptoms of a histamine intolerance are hypertension, irregular sleep patterns, frequent headaches, tissue swelling, dizziness. I had that too, anxiety, unstable body temperature, nausea, flushing, nasal congestion, abnormal menstrual cycle, hives, and fatigue. But luckily, less than 1% of the population suffers from this intolerance, but it's valuable to note because histamines are found in a very wide variety of foods that we eat. If other dietary measures haven't helped you in the past, then try looking into your histamine consumption and see. So, Vivi, I'm trying to get through my notes and Vivi is pushing my papers. So, all right, so here we go with what can we do about all this, right? So as a holistic health coach and clinician, I look at each client as an individual with varying needs based on genetics, environment, and unique health history. Because we are all very, very unique. And health is identified as a dynamic balance of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being, rather than just being the absence of a disease. You know, I mean, we are whole beings. We're not just this walking, talking humanoid. So because there is really a complex mix of interactions between nutrition, physical activity, our body's integrity, and stress management. They all interact with each other. And there is testing out there for prevention and the treatment. So one of the things, that was one of the things that I definitely wanted to talk about is, so there are many different tests available to try to decode food allergies, such as skin or scratch tests, various blood tests, such as an IgG panel, as well as bacterial breath tests. I will tell you, though, that from my own personal perspective, I had a lot of those tests done, and none of them, everything was coming back negative, negative, negative. But I know for a fact that I can't eat those foods. So there are a lot of false negatives. And it's unclear about how effective these tests are for intolerances and sensitivities. So try a comprehensive elimination diet first to remove and analyze your body's reaction to certain foods is one of my suggestions. And then sometimes further testing is required to get the full picture. But the diet strategy is a great tool to begin the process to really discovering your best health. So elimination diet, right? So an elimination diet is done by eliminating potential problem foods for a minimum of 3 weeks, or until you begin feeling symptom-free. And actually, for me, it was 3 weeks. They are then reintroduced into your diet one by one with a close eye on how each make you feel. All right. If they begin to bother you again, however, they're taken out again to provide a clean slate for the following food group. So elimination diet is a bit of a process. Now, many of you might already suspect that you might have a gluten trigger or a dairy trigger, or you just want to get rid of processed foods in your diet. You know, I was that person that I just went head first and I went straight in and I just did it because I was to the point where I was sick and I was sick and tired of being sick. No lie. So the following foods are actually recommended to be removed from your diet, okay, at one point or another. So they recommend you to remove dairy, gluten, soy, corn, eggs, refined sugar, peanuts, red meat. That's, that's, for me, that's a personal preference. I actually eat clean. I like grass-fed beef in my diet every now and then. So alcohol, yes, caffeine, hydrogenated oils, packaged or processed foods, and any other food that you may believe may be a source of your discomfort. So such as the FODMAPs or histamine containing foods. So you might be asking yourself at this point, all right, so if I take all those things out of my diet, or if I start to take things out of my diet, what the heck can I eat, right? So unless you have an individual concern or a reason to avoid any of these foods, the following, you can actually, you're encouraged to actually put these foods into your diet. So you can, for gluten-free grains, you can eat rice, quinoa, amaranth, tapioca, buckwheat, teff, almond flour, as long as there's no nut allergies. Dairy substitutes are almond milk, coconut milk, hemp milk, rice milk, fresh vegetables, minus corn, whole fruits, fresh, frozen, or water-packed are great. Lean and clean animal protein, beans and most legumes except for soybeans and peanuts. High quality oils, so like coconut, avocado, cold pressed olive oil. Herbal teas, just make sure if you go the herbal tea route, you want to make sure it's decaffeinated and you want to make sure that it's organic, that you're getting quality herbs. Sweetener alternatives in moderation, so honey, blackstrap molasses, and brown rice syrup are great alternatives. And then obviously, keeping plenty of spices in your life to keep it fun. I love to cook with spices because they really do add a lot to, your foods. So, okay, so food journaling. The only thing that I want to say about food journaling is this, is as you start taking foods out of your diet in your elimination, when you're eliminating foods, you don't have to actually journal, okay, on this day I ate this, this, and this, and this, and this. Because number one, we don't have time for that. I know I don't have time for that. I mean, seriously, even with our phones, to get it out and to have to type it all in. But what I do encourage you to do, and I'm going to talk a minute about a course that I'm actually opening up to offer because I think it's really important to do this, is to journal about how you're feeling throughout the journey. Because foods are feelings. And I know that sounds so funny. Because the first time I even said that, I was like, oh my God. But it makes so much sense because how we eat, it has so much to do with what's triggering inside our body. And when that's triggering inside our body, we can be feeling, so as you're taking foods out of your diet, like I said before, you will go through some detox. I went through detox when I removed gluten and when I removed sugar. Not so much when I took out dairy. Maybe it's because I had already removed the sugar and the gluten. So the worst part of it was over. But I remember feeling like sheer hell on some days. So it's very important to really keep track of how you're feeling as you're going through that. So that is really the importance of keeping track of how you're feeling when you're taking foods out of your diet. So now some recipe ideas, guys. Yay! There's a lot of foods that you can actually eat to stay healthy. So just for example, here is like quinoa berry banana bake, spaghetti squash hash browns, garlic mushroom quinoa, Italian roasted vegetables. I mean, and the list goes on and on. I think a lot of people are afraid and they think eating clean is actually hard and it's so time consuming. It's really not. Like last night, I had to throw dinner together for me and the kids really super fast. And I made a little tuna salad. I did cauliflower rice. I riced some cauliflower really quickly. I threw it in the skillet with some coconut aminos and I warmed those up. And then I cut a red pepper, threw that in the skillet as well, warmed that up, and that was it. Like that was our dinner. And it was so satisfying and it was so good. And the kids even ate it. So it doesn't have to be complicated. There's no reason why it has to be complicated. So I just shared a ton of information with you. And I know that you might be a little bit overwhelmed at this point because I know that when I was first starting, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of information, because allergies, intolerances, and sensitivities can really impact your quality of life. But it's so important to know that it doesn't have to be a struggle forever. Changing your eating habits and taking control of your health requires a lot of effort, but is incredibly rewarding. Pity. But because of the effort that I personally know that has to go into this, I've created a 9-week course where we will be a team, work together, and get you amazing results. So we're going to be digging deep together to relieve your inner inflammation by cutting out gluten, dairy, and processed foods. Especially, we're going to be focusing on sugars. And these 3 foods have such an enormous impact on our overall health and well-being. So while it's going to be a challenge, it's ultimately going to mean greater health. And I know how many books there are with specific protocols to follow, but the reality is, in our busy day-to-day, who has time to read and apply all those protocols? I know because I was there. So my course actually targets these 3 inflammatory foods and cuts through the fat to offer you recipes, guides, and resources with both individual and group support that sets you up for success. And I will be the coach. I'll be your coach. And I will guide you and help you to listen to your body and tune into your true gut instinct as we go through this. So how this course is going to work is in the first 3 weeks, I'm going to remove the gluten. In weeks 3 to 6, we're going to remove the refined sugars. In weeks 6 to 9, we're going to remove the dairy. And along the way, you're going to receive a quick reference recipe guide for breakfast, lunches, and dinners. An Eat This, Not That guide, a whole foods guide, sleep guide, an emotions accountability log, just like we talked about, and a daily food outline. And you're also going to have access to me in unlimited emails throughout the course and a private Facebook page to have access to each other as well, because it's also going to be with peers. We'll be keeping in touch in a weekly Zoom call on Wednesdays at 12, where you can ask questions, give feedback, and get support, get encouragement, and so much more. So my plan is to start this course on July 9th. So this 9-week course is usually worth $1,297. But because you've registered and attended my webinar, if it's something that you're interested in, you can actually get a special discounted price with $300 off for $997. And that's $997 of investing in your health, not putting it off any longer, getting yourself out of the way, getting support, done for your recipes, guides, and getting on your way to better health. So this offer isn't going to last and spaces are limited because it's just me and I'm the only coach. I'm only opening the course up to the first 50 people. So, and we can talk about this a little bit more. So I'm actually going to stop the share on my screen. Hi, everybody. And okay, so I think that stopped the share. Should have, yes. All right. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming. So now I can do, let me see. I can do a quick Q&A. So I want you guys to shoot me some questions. If you have any questions, let me know. I think I have to open the Q&A. All right, open. So do you have any questions for me? I know that was like a lot. That was a lot of information. It was a whole lot of information. Now, Teresa just asked, I saw her asking if there was sound. Teresa, I hope that you could hear me. I know at the beginning I asked that question and I got a yes, that everyone could hear me. So do I have any questions? Does anybody have any questions? And like I said, there will be a replay. So if you wanted to go back, oh, I think I got one. So what besides red wine has histamine and what counteracts? So that is a good question. I don't know if I have to press answer live or answer, you would like to answer? Sorry guys, I told you I'm still learning this. So let me refer to my sheet again, because the FOD MAPs are the ones that typically have the histamine. And yes, red wine definitely is one of them. I'm trying to find my slide here. This is not something that I know off the top of my head. So like here, it says gluten grains are definitely one. Legumes, dairy products, some fruits, and actually some vegetables too. And I would actually have to look that up and to see which fruits and which vegetables contain the histamines. And then a lot of sugar alcohols. I'm not a fan of sugar alcohols at all. So I don't know if that answers your question definitively, but if you want more information on that, I can certainly look it up a little bit more, Linda, and try to find out for you to see what other foods have histamines and the counteracts. Okay, so Tammy, I have many food intolerances, including nightshades. My question is, should I avoid vitamins made with whole foods? Wow, that is a really good question. That's a really good question. Honestly, Tammy, I don't know the answer to that. But I'm intrigued, and that's something that I could certainly look up. I know for me, I take mega food vitamins. And here's the other thing to consider when it comes to vitamins versus raw foods. So when you're dealing with vitamins, even though they say like it's raw, I'm not so sure it's like as raw as you're eating the actual like nightshade. So I'm intrigued though. I want to actually find out for myself. So I will look that up and find out that answer, because I am not 100% sure. But like I said, I almost feel like, you know, it would definitely, it might not be the same reaction. Okay, so Sarah, gluten or soda, do you recommend avoidance of gluten for people who have absolutely no obvious issues with it? Yeah, that question comes up a lot. Okay, so that's one of those questions where I like to kind of say, I leave it up to your discretion, because there are some people that don't have any issue with gluten. But like, if you watched my series, if you listen to Dr. Tom, like his thing is they actually have studies that show that people who have no obvious symptoms, that it's still affecting their gut. So I guess if you're going to go off of the scientific aspect of it, then I would say yes. Then I would say, then if you're going to go off of the studies that they're actually showing that people who are not showing any symptoms that seem to do fine with it, I would still say, yeah, but it's still affecting them, so they need to come off of it. On the other hand, if you're going to kind of go off of, well, I feel fine, there's really nothing that's happening to me, maybe because you're not feeling it just yet. It could happen at any time. Just like Dr. Tom said, anything can be a trigger, especially if it's in your genetic code, that you might be already sensitive to it for whatever the reason. So that's kind of like one of those fine line questions. It really depends on how you look at it. So if you're either looking at it scientifically, where it's actually showing that, I think they're messing with the food so much, between the GMOs and the pesticides and the herbicides, that I really feel like it's getting harder and harder for our own digestive tracts to recognize not only the grains, because they're genetically modified, but everything else that's being introduced to our GI tract too. It's, it's a foreign entity, and for a lot of us, it's triggering the immune response, which I personally, I think that's what happened to me. So that's one of those fine line questions. But yeah. So any other questions? I think that's it. Like I said, guys, this is so strange, because I'm used to like talking to people face to face, and not being able to see you guys it's definitely kind of like a learning curve for me. So awesome. So it doesn't look like any other questions are coming in. So one of the things that I wanted to do is, for anyone that is potentially interested in, my 9-week course, I have actually just put in there my link to give me a call, so that we can actually talk a little bit further about jumping in and doing some just just some, I even like to call it just some therapy for your body so that you can actually start feeling well again. So, you know, don't feel like, oh my gosh, you know, if your mind is telling you, I really don't know if I can do that, that's going to be intense. But if you know that there's something going on with you, and if you're looking for somebody to help you, you know, I'm happy to help, and I'm super excited about offering this course. So again, you can just click on that link and you can set up a call with me, and we could chat about it a little bit further. But other than that, oh, wait a minute. It looks like I have more questions. Let's see. Okay, let me see. So Sarah asked, do you know of any research available on reversing food allergies? When you say, do you know of any research available on reversing food allergies, I'm not really sure what you mean about that. I do know that I know that they're doing something with peanuts. This is actually the only one that I've heard of that they're doing. I believe that there's small injections of, like, if somebody is very allergic to peanuts, they're doing like small introductions. I don't know if it's an actual like introduction to the peanut, actually eating it, or if it's an injection of some sort with some component of the peanut allergy in it. But they are doing those where you can actually, it actually kind of is triggering the immune response, but at a very low rate. So they're not going into their full allergic response. But as for any other research on reversing food allergies, I honestly, I haven't heard of any. And really, I know most of us have pretty much just gone the route of just eliminating and avoiding the food. So not the easiest thing, but you know, yes. All right, so Tammy said, I also have a histamine intolerance, which makes it impossible to eat gluten gut healing foods because they're cultured. Any ideas? Let's see here. Histamine intolerance, which makes it impossible to eat gut. So that's a toughie. So if you already know that you have a histamine intolerance, yeah, that's a toughie. So basically, probably what you would want to do is start with a really, really clean slate, Tammy, which you may have already done. But start at a really clean slate, and just try to find foods that are not histamine related, which I'm sure you already know, since you already know that you have a histamine intolerance, to, you know, that can help to reestablish the gut flora. You might actually even look into maybe some, I personally don't know any offhand, but maybe some products, not necessarily vitamins, but some products that could definitely help with reestablishing gut flora. So that's, you know, that's definitely something that you can look into. Oh, and Tammy, there is something called Megaspore Biotics. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. You might have, but that might be something that you can look into as well, and see what happens there. Does reheated pasta release gluten in the body? Yeah, I'm not sure. Are you talking about, if you're talking about gluten-based pasta, yeah, no matter if it is a gluten-based pasta, even if you're just cooking it initially, or if you're just reheating it and you're eating it, if you're ingesting it and it has gluten in it, yes, it is going to release, it's gonna put the gluten, right into your gut. So now if it's a gluten-free pasta, then no, because it's not containing gluten. But yes, I said cultured but meant fermented. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I mean that's definitely something you could maybe look into megaspore biotics and see if you have to stay away from the fermented foods, then definitely like something like a megaspore biotic, or probiotics, those kinds of things that will actually help to reculture the gut would definitely be of great value to you. So you could try that and see what happens. So let's see.